listening to Over the Oxer podcast with Tracy Cole for all things to do with the mind for equestrians. Today I'm talking all about cantering and getting a mindset so that you can canter confidently. If you already canter confidently, you can kind of exchange the word canter for something else. It doesn't have to be canter. The reason that I'm doing the canter episode is that for me, this is one of the big three that riders request. So most riders request hacking, jumping higher, or cantering. So the canter fear often comes from a fear of the speed or the perceived speed or that feeling of being out of control. So the speed, obviously we know logically that you can canter a horse at the slowest speed possible. You know, you're thinking about the dressage riders who are riding at really high level and doing a piaffe. So you can think about canter as being any speed. You know, it could be the speed of a person walking slowly. It doesn't have to be full-blown, a fast canter, near gallop style of canter. It can be slow, it can be measured. It doesn't have to be in any way that the horse is going out of control. Which brings me on to those feelings of being out of control as a rider. And sometimes it's that first transition stride from trot to canter that people worry about. They worry about that feeling because obviously the horse's legs all have to be rearranged, and that first kick-off stride, people think of it as being out of control, but the horse has to do this. Horse has to rearrange their leg and their stride pattern to get into the canter. So you have to have that strike off. So we're going to talk a little bit about things you can control before you ever get on the horse, and also the thoughts that you can control so that you have that feeling of being in control of the situation. Canter fears can also come from the past, something that's happened in the past. And usually this has been something where the rider hasn't been in control of the situation. For instance, you know, some friends have persuaded a rider to go out and canter across the fields. And this has been a bolt or a very fast canter or a very fast gallop. And this has put them off. So that kind of feeling when you are going across open fields is very different to if you are cantering in a school. That fear of the horse being totally out of control and you can't stop them sometimes comes from childhood. Even childhood experience that you loved at the time because you loved the speed. Alternatively, it may have come from a story that you've heard or something you've experienced yourself on a different horse or different style of horse. So obviously, if you're riding quite a small horse, their stride's going to be shorter. So the canter will feel a little bit quicker than if you're used to riding a larger horse with a longer stride and them not taking that many strides down the long side of a school, for example. So that fear from the past or the fear from something else that somebody's told you about their experience is all part of patterning. Patterning occurs in our minds, and it's a super way that we deal with life because our brain simply matches a pattern. It will say to us in a new experience or something that we've not done for a long time, what is this like? And so it'll find the pattern. So if your nearest match to cantering in a school is cantering across a field and being out of control, that's what your mind decides is the same or near enough of a match for you to experience it the same way. But obviously we're doing something completely different. We're going to change how you think about cantering and change the whole setup of the canter so that the experience will be different. This is a new pattern that you're laying down. So if we don't lay down some preparations, some new patterning, then of course your mind just calls up whatever the nearest match is. So whether you were jumping as a kid, or you were riding across fields, or maybe you had a little pony that was just uncontrollable, or maybe as an adult you've experienced that, but now you're on a different horse, or you're at a different yard, or your horse was spooked at the time and had a good reason to start that fight and flight response. We're going to control the situation much more so that the patterning doesn't need to be the old pattern. So let's think about practicalities first of all, and the setup of your school. So you may want to think about the school that you're going to canter in. And you may want to think about using some poles to your advantage. So for example, if you've got a huge school, you may not want to canter all the way down the long side. So could you put some poles out that would limit the size of the area that you're going to canter in, and you see it as a small school, and that may help you. Could you in some way put some poles out or maybe cones out in the corners so that you go round the cones? And obviously when you approach a corner, you've got to either do a little half halt or you've got to slow down in some way so that you can go around the corner easily and gently. When you're thinking about the school, make sure that you are obviously choosing a day when there aren't massive distractions around. So if the farmer in the next field is about to fertilize the field, that's probably not the day, is it? And, as much as you can, controlling for things like massive wind speed or something like that, don't choose that day. If the wind speed's up and this was the day that you were desperate to have a go, just wait. It's so much better to wait. There's always things that we can do in the meantime in terms of your mindset to help you so that when you do get on, all those things are out of your mind. You could think about going for a ride or a lesson in an indoor school, if that's an option for you. Maybe you've got an indoor school where you are, or you could hack to one, or you could travel to one. And I know this is if you haven't got an indoor school on site or nearby, this is quite a job then, isn't it? Because you've got to load your horse, you've got to travel there, it's added expense, and I understand that. But it might just be good as a one-off just to get you going. And you could even have your lesson there so you've got somebody with you. That may also be an idea when you've decided to canter, to have an instructor present or a friend present, just to kind of video you so you can see what the speed is like, because sometimes the impression of speed is nothing like the impression when you're on the ground. Another thing to think about is to possibly go for a mechanical horse lesson. So these are great, and these are obviously all around the country. If you are in the Cheshire, Staffordshire, Derbyshire kind of catchment, then Emma, who came on the podcast a few months ago and talked about equipilates and the mind-body connection, look her up either on the podcast or on Facebook. So it's Emma Stamenkovic. I'll pop her down into the description box below. And she does the mechanical horse lessons, and she's brilliant with people that just want to gain confidence in their riding, whatever that specific might be. But maybe near you, there's also somebody that can help you out on a mechanical horse where you've not got to think about the environment, those kind of horses tend to react absolutely perfectly. They're very well behaved. So you could go and you can get that impression of those first few strides, knowing that everything is in your control, including the off button. So, you're perfectly safe. And talking about safety, it might also be an idea to just put your back protector on. Because although this is obviously a physical protection, but also I found that lots of people, when they put their back protectors on, feel better. They don't maybe need it in terms of they're not going to fall off, they're not unsteady in the saddle, but it just has that added bonus of making you feel better. So you might want to consider that as well. In with the preparation before you've ever got on your horse is obviously strong visualization. Now, I don't necessarily mean the visuals for this, so we're talking mental imagery again. And again, I'll put into the description box an episode that I did about visualization. But here, what I think would be really useful is that you think about the feeling, about the sensation of that first canter stride, or maybe the first 2 or 3 canter strides. What does it feel like? That rhythm that you want to get into. And for this, I know this is going to sound mad, but have a little go at it. Sit on a chair, or maybe the arm of an armchair, something like that. Or if you've got a saddle rack that would take your weight, sit and pretend that you are in the saddle. And you're in the saddle trotting. Maybe you're doing a sitting trot. That's going to be easier if you're on the arm of an armchair. And think about your aids. You could even, if you're in such a position, you could maybe start to move your legs. Inside leg on the girth, outside leg just slightly behind the girth, looking up, thinking about giving with your hands, thinking about keeping yourself upright rather than sort of pushing the horse forward with your body by leaning forward. Think about sitting upright and get that motion into your mind so that it becomes a pattern. Thinking about trotting, maybe in your mind you can see or you have the impression of a corner coming up in the school. Give your aids and you're forward into canter. And you think about then coming back after just a few strides, coming back into a trot, maybe into a walk. Get yourself feeling really good and wait until you feel really good again and then have another go. And then maybe change rein. And that will keep you in good stead because your mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you've closed your eyes, you've positioned yourself in the school, you're thinking about your horse, so you know the stride length and so on, you're thinking about the rhythm that you want, then your mind thinks you've already done it. So if you can practice that a few times, then your mind already thinks you've done it. If it helps with this preparation time, have a look at your horse cantering. And by this I mean you could look on the lunge, you could free school, you could look at somebody else cantering, and just be really aware of that rhythm and the speed, because it probably doesn't look that fast and it probably doesn't look out of control. And just kind of make a mental note of that although when you're riding, it'll feel faster. Of course it does. It's like being on a bike or something, isn't it? Or it's like imagining walking even. When you actually walk and you walk briskly, you'll get that sensation of walking briskly. And you may not get that if you just think about it. Then you need to think about using peripheral vision. So again, there's an episode on peripheral vision. I'll put a link down in the description box to that. Get used to using it so that when you go into your canter, you're not looking downwards. You're not looking at your horse's mane or head or ears, but you're looking peripherally, which is going to keep you calm. So use peripheral vision. Make sure you can do the peripheral vision in walk and trot, and you can maintain it for at least half a school or the length that you're going to canter. So once you've done that, then you're thinking more about getting on the horse. So on the day that you've assigned, make sure you've got plenty of time, that you're not rushing. You've got half an hour and that's it, and you've got to be finished, because that will stress you even more. Make sure you've got like 2 hours or something, and you're thinking about riding for half an hour, 20 minutes, so everything's a bit slower, everything's a bit more controlled. There's not this necessary frantic need to get out and ride and get cantering right now. So what I would do is that I would start to say to myself things like, I only have to canter 2 strides. Because you think to yourself, well, 2 strides and then I'll be back in trot and then I'll be back in walk. Just gives your mind that bit of release. You could even say to yourself, I don't have to canter until tomorrow or until I want to do, until. Again, it gives you this release because we put so much pressure on ourselves. I'm only going to canter when I'm ready. Or something like, I don't have to canter yet. So these types of sentences just release that pressure valve. I'm only going to do such and such. I don't need to do it yet. I don't need to do it until. So until, yet, and only are great words for you to use so that you take the pressure off. And if on the day when you've laid out the poles and you've done the peripheral vision and you've done the visualization and it's not windy and you don't canter, does it matter? I don't think so. It wasn't the right time for you, and that's that. Avoid being disappointed and know that you are still in the preparation phase, and that doesn't matter. The more you prepare, the better it's going to be when you actually get on and do it. So once you then think about everything's being prepped, you're feeling like you want to have a go, you've been able to warm up in walk and trot, and you've been absolutely fine. Maybe you're with an instructor, maybe you're with a friend, or maybe you prefer to be on your own. Then one of the things that is quite nice to do, and again, this might be in your preparation as well, is to think about that rhythm that you want. So this could be into your visualization as well, that in order to maintain the rhythm that you want, what you can say to yourself. Lots of people do Nelly the Elephant. So, the song, I'm not going to sing it, but I might just say it a little bit. So Nelly the Elephant packed her trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with a trumpety trump, 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 trump. So you can say that, you can sing it if you like, to keep the rhythm. If you don't know the song, then you can use the days of the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. You can say the days of the week. You need something, obviously, that you can do really easily, that it's just second nature. You're not having to think about words of a song or some kind of rhyme or whatever. But you might want to get that in so that it keeps you confident of a nice, easy, controlled rhythm under your control. If you're still feeling really nervous about cantering, you might just need a little bit of a boost with a mindset session. But have a go at all of these things first and see what you get out of it. Good luck. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you again really soon.